Disclaimer: this story is intended for mature audiences only. It contains emotional themes, relationship conflicts, and sensitive situations that may not be suitable for younger viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The purpose of this story is not to promote infidelity or disrespect family values but to explore the emotional complexities behind human decisions and relationships. Names, characters, and events have been modified for storytelling purposes. Growing up in that house, everything looked perfect on the outside. People in the neighborhood thought we were a happy family. The big house, my father's clean suits, the polite way my mother used to smile at everyone, it was all part of the show. But behind the walls, everything felt hollow. My father wasn't a bad man. He just wasn't there for me, not really. I don't mean he didn't provide for me, the bills were paid, I had a car when I turned 17, and the fridge was always full. But it's funny how you can have everything around you except the one thing you need most, connection. I can't even remember the last time my father and I had a real conversation. Real, as in more than just, how's school, or did you do your homework? Even when I'd try to sit closer to him, maybe during dinner or those rare Sundays when he'd be home, he was always distant, distracted with work emails, or quietly scrolling his phone. And when he wasn't doing that, it was like he was lost in his own head. Maybe he had his own battles I didn't know about, but I was too young to understand that then. All I knew was that I felt invisible. My mom? She wasn't any better. Most of the time, she was either arguing with him or pretending to be someone else entirely when guests were over. That house was like a hotel, clean, decorated, organized, but no one stayed long in the same room with anyone else. Everyone was alone in their own little space, with doors shut, headphones on, eyes down. I used to tell myself that this was just how families were. That maybe movies exaggerated how parents and children should be close, laugh together, go camping, make pancakes on weekends. But the more I tried to believe that, the lonelier I felt inside. And that loneliness, that quiet kind of sadness that doesn't scream but just sits with you, it made me start looking for something outside that house. I didn't know what I was searching for exactly. Love? Attention? Maybe just someone to see me, really see me. I was tired of walking around like a ghost in my own home. And when I finally met someone who looked at me, who listened when I talked, who wanted to be around me, I didn't think about right or wrong. I just thought about feeling alive again. But I had no idea that trying to feel alive would almost destroy everything. It started so small, almost innocent at first. I wasn't searching for trouble. I wasn't even thinking about doing something wrong. But that's how these things creep in, isn't it? Not like a storm, more like a slow, steady rain, soaking everything before you even realize you're wet. It happened online, of all places. Just a random comment on one of my posts, nothing dramatic. But it was the way he said it, like he actually saw me, not just my face or my outfit, but me. At first, I ignored it. I wasn't desperate. I didn't need attention from strangers. But loneliness makes you weak in quiet, unexpected ways. A few days later, another message. This time a little more personal. And then another. Before I knew it, we were talking almost every day. He was older. Not old, but older than me by enough to make it obvious that this wasn't a friendship that would be approved by anyone in my family. Maybe that's why it felt thrilling at first. But it wasn't just about rebellion. It was about connection. I could tell him things I never said out loud before, about my dreams, my family, how invisible I felt even when I was sitting right in front of my parents. And he listened. Really listened. No judgment. No cutting me off. No tired looks or fake nods like I got at home. It felt good. Dangerous, yes, but good. It didn't take long for things to cross the line. Late-night conversations turned into flirting. Flirting turned into pictures. Pictures led to meeting up just once, or so I told myself. We picked a place where I felt safe, where I thought no one would find us. It was like being underwater, every choice I made muffled by the sound of my own heartbeat, my own need to feel wanted. And in that moment, I didn't feel like a bad person. I didn't feel like I was betraying anyone. I felt seen. I felt alive. I justified it to myself over and over. My dad doesn't even know who I am. It's not like I'm hurting anyone. I deserve this after being ignored for so long. But deep down, I knew those were just excuses. What scared me wasn't the mistake itself. What scared me was how easy it was to fall into it, how natural it felt in that moment. I had no idea that I wasn't just standing on the edge of a mistake, I was already halfway off the cliff, falling faster than I realized. And soon, I would hit the ground harder than I could ever imagine. I remember the exact day everything crossed that invisible line, the one between "this is risky" and "this could destroy everything." It was a rainy afternoon. The kind of rain that makes everything feel softer, quieter, like the whole world is holding its breath. My parents were supposed to be out for the day. Some business thing, or maybe it was one of those charity events my mom always dragged my dad to. Either way, I knew they wouldn't be back until late. Or at least, I thought I knew. I told him to come over. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I wasn't thinking at all. I had this fantasy in my head, like I was finally in control of something, finally making my own choices. He arrived, casual, like it was no big deal, and for a while, it felt exactly how I wanted it to. Easy. Exciting. Like nothing else in the world mattered except that moment. We weren't even doing anything outrageous at first. Just talking, laughing, sitting close. But the closeness, the way his hand brushed against mine, the way his eyes didn't drift away like everyone else's, it pulled me in deeper. The guilt was there, like a whisper in the back of my mind, but it was drowned out by something louder, the need to feel alive, to feel like I mattered to someone. And then, we kissed. It wasn't soft or hesitant. It was the kind of kiss that feels like you've been holding your breath for years and suddenly you remember how to breathe again. That was the moment. The exact second I knew this wasn't just harmless anymore. I had stepped into something I couldn't undo. The excitement in my chest was now tangled with fear, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. And then, the sound. At first, I thought I imagined it. The creak of the front door. My stomach dropped. The kind of fear that doesn't shout but freezes you entirely. I heard footsteps. Heavy ones. Familiar ones. I pulled away instantly, panic written all over my face, and I could see the same fear reflected in his. We both knew. This wasn't just embarrassing. This was something else. This was dangerous. And then I saw him. My dad. Standing at the entrance of the living room. He didn't say a word. Not at first. He didn't shout, didn't lunge, didn't even blink. He just stood there, staring at me like I was a stranger. Like he didn't recognize the person in front of him. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to rewind time, erase the past 10 minutes, erase everything. But life doesn't work that way. That was the moment everything in my life broke open, wide, raw, unforgiving. And nothing would ever be the same again. Time didn't just slow down in that moment, it stopped. Everything around me froze except for the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The only thing moving was the rain sliding down the windows, drop by drop, like the sky itself was embarrassed for me. My dad stood there, holding the door halfway open, one foot inside, one foot out, like he hadn't even decided yet if he really wanted to walk fully into this disaster or just close the door and pretend it never happened. But he didn't leave. He stood still, staring, his hand clenched tight around the keys he was still holding, his knuckles white. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I glanced at the guy next to me. Suddenly he wasn't charming, he wasn't exciting, he was just terrified, shifting uncomfortably, like he might bolt out the nearest window if it meant getting away. But no one moved. And my dad, he didn't explode the way I expected. No screaming. No slamming doors or fists through the wall like you see in movies. Just one sharp breath, like someone trying to stop themselves from drowning. His eyes didn't even look at him. Not once. The whole time, he kept his eyes on me, like the man sitting next to me wasn't even real, like the real betrayal wasn't in the kiss, it was in me. I wasn't supposed to be home, he finally said, his voice low, steady, terrifying in its calmness. That one sentence hit harder than any shouting ever could. I wished he would yell. I wished he would throw something, make it easier for me to feel angry back. But this quiet, it was unbearable. My mind started racing with excuses. It's not what you think. I didn't mean for this to happen. We were just talking. But I knew how stupid those excuses sounded even before they reached my lips. Finally, he moved. Not toward me. Not toward him. He just stepped backward, slowly, like someone stepping off a stage after forgetting all their lines. His hand reached for the doorknob again, but this time his fingers were trembling. Out, he whispered, not to me, to him. Without a word, the guy next to me jumped up, grabbed his jacket, and walked past my father like a criminal leaving the scene of a crime. My dad didn't even glance at him. Just kept his eyes locked on mine, burning right through every weak excuse I hadn't even said yet. And then, without another word, he left. Closed the door gently behind him. That was worse than any punishment I could have imagined. No screaming, no threats, just that terrifying, suffocating silence. I sat there, frozen, realizing that sometimes silence is louder than any noise in the world. I had broken something that might never be repaired after the door closed. The silence inside that house felt like punishment in itself. I sat there on the couch, still as a statue, feeling the weight of what I'd just done pressing down on my chest so hard I could barely breathe. I wanted him to come back, to yell at me, to do something, anything, to break the silence. But he didn't. And that was the worst part. I stayed in that spot for what felt like hours, listening to nothing but the sound of my own guilt echoing inside my head. When I finally stood up, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Apologize? Run? I walked to the door, thinking maybe I'd catch a glimpse of him driving away, but when I opened it, there he was. Sitting in his car, parked in the driveway, both hands gripping the steering wheel like he was trying to break it with his bare fingers. The rain was falling harder now, streaking across the windshield, but he just sat there, staring straight ahead like the whole world outside didn't exist. I could have gone out there. I could have knocked on the window or shouted, "I'm sorry," but I was too much of a coward in that moment. I slowly closed the door again and leaned my forehead against it, the shame burning in my chest like acid. Later that evening, when the sky outside was dark and the rain had finally slowed to a quiet drizzle, I heard the door open again. His footsteps were heavy but controlled. I expected a storm when I turned around, but what I saw was worse. My father's face was blank. Not angry. Not sad. Just empty. His eyes looked through me, not at me. It was like I wasn't his daughter anymore, just someone who used to live here, someone who used to mean something. "I'm not going to ask you why," he said, his voice hoarse like he hadn't spoken in hours. "I don't care about your reasons." That sentence hit harder than any slap could. He didn't care. That's when I realized what I'd done wasn't just a mistake, it was a fracture. Something deep and sharp that split the ground between us. "I'm tired," he said, quietly, like he was talking more to himself than to me. "I'm tired of pretending this family isn't already broken." I wanted to scream, "It's not just me. This isn't just my fault. But the words stuck in my throat because part of me knew he was right. This wasn't just about one mistake. This was about years of silence, years of pretending things were fine when they weren't. He didn't yell. He didn't punish. He just left the room. And somehow, that emptiness, that complete disappointment, was 1,000 times worse than any punishment I'd been expecting. After that night, everything in the house felt heavier. Not because anyone was shouting or breaking things, no, it was worse than that. It was the quiet. The kind of quiet that screams. Every sound in that house echoed differently now, like the walls themselves were judging me. My dad didn't ignore me in the way people usually mean ignoring. He still said good morning when we passed each other. Still left the usual money for groceries on the kitchen counter. Still answered if I asked a direct question about something practical, like where's the car key? Or, do you need me to get anything from the store? But that's all it was now, practical. Mechanical. Hollow. Gone were the days of even pretending to care. Gone was the occasional awkward smile or the half-hearted attempt at asking about school or friends. I didn't realize how much I missed even those awkward moments until they were gone. Now it felt like we were two strangers renting space in the same house, passing each other like ghosts, sharing meals in silence or at completely different times just to avoid eye contact. Mom didn't know yet. She was busy with her usual routines, constantly on her phone, planning parties, pretending to be the perfect wife on social media. And a sick part of me wondered if she would even notice if the house fell apart completely. Maybe she already knew we were broken, but just didn't care enough to say it out loud. I tried once, just once, to talk to him. To sit next to him on the couch when he was watching TV, even though I knew he wasn't really watching it. I opened my mouth, searching for the right words, but nothing came out except, Dad, that's all I got before he stood up, grabbed his keys, and left the room like I wasn't even there. It was then that I realized, I had become invisible in a completely different way now. Before, I felt invisible because no one noticed me, no one cared. Now, I was invisible because he chose to unsee me. And honestly, that felt worse. Days turned into weeks, and nothing changed. I deleted all the old messages, blocked his number, unfollowed every account that reminded me of that mistake. But it was too late for that to matter. The damage was done. I thought the worst part of getting caught would be the shouting, the punishment, the shame. But I was wrong. The worst part was realizing I had broken something that might never get fixed. That I hadn't just betrayed my father, I had betrayed the last chance of this family being whole again. And now, I was starting to wonder if we had ever really been whole in the first place. I thought silence would be the only thing left between us forever, but I was wrong. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It started on one of those heavy evenings when the sky looked bruised with gray clouds, and the whole house smelled like rain coming through the cracks. I was in the kitchen making tea, pretending I wasn't shaking inside just from being in the same room as him. My father walked in, not even looking at me at first, just reaching for a glass of water like it was any normal evening. And then, out of nowhere, he said, "You think you were the only one feeling alone in this house?" I froze. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't soft either. It was tired. "I know I wasn't the best father," he continued. "Maybe not even a good one. You think I don't know what kind of man I became in this house? Working late. Avoiding conversations. Letting things slide because I didn't have the strength to fight for this family anymore." I stood there with my hands trembling slightly around the cup, the steam fogging my glasses. I didn't know what to say. I had been prepared for blame, for accusations, for punishment. I wasn't prepared for honesty. "My marriage was already dead long before you did what you did," he said, leaning against the counter. "We just didn't want to admit it." Your mother and we became roommates with rings. Polite, cold strangers under the same roof. For the first time, I saw him, really saw him, not just as a father, not just as the man who caught me in that unforgivable moment, but as a human being. Flawed. Hurt. Tired. You think I was angry because you brought someone here? No. I was angry because I recognized that look on your face. That same lost, hollow expression I see in the mirror every morning. And it broke me to realize that you were carrying the same emptiness I'd been carrying for years. I couldn't hold it anymore. My throat felt raw as I finally whispered, "I'm sorry." And I meant it. Not in that selfish way of "I'm sorry I got caught," but in that deep, painful way where you realize you've hurt someone who was already bleeding. He nodded slightly, his jaw tight. I know you are. And I don't hate you. I'm just disappointed. Not just in you, in myself too. For letting it get this far, for not being the kind of father you deserved. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the first real thing we'd said to each other in years. Not shouting. Not fake smiles. Just truth. And somehow, in that heavy silence between words, I realized that maybe there was still a way to find each other again. That night changed something between us. Not everything, not suddenly, but something important. The silence wasn't filled with anger anymore. It was filled with truth. And when people start telling the truth, healing either begins, or the final goodbye does. In the days that followed, we spoke in small pieces. Not long, drawn-out talks. Just fragments. Like we were both afraid that if we tried too hard, it would all collapse again. I stopped expecting comfort. I stopped expecting him to forgive me overnight. Honestly, I wasn't even sure I deserved that. One night, he sat at the dining table, hands clasped in front of him, his wedding ring glinting under the dull kitchen light. Without looking up, he finally said the thing I think both of us were too afraid to speak out loud. I don't think your mom and I can keep pretending anymore. I'm going to talk to her. About everything. My chest tightened. Somehow, hearing that hurt worse than the night he caught me. It wasn't just about what I had done, it was about everything that had been broken long before that kiss ever happened. I wasn't the only crack in this family, I was just the one that made it impossible to hide anymore. I didn't say anything dramatic like "don't do this because of me" or "please stay together." Because deep down, I knew it was the right thing. Staying together out of habit or shame wasn't love. And pretending would only make all of us smaller, emptier people in the long run. That weekend, he packed a small bag. Not everything, just enough to tell me this wasn't one of those dramatic exits you see in movies. This was real. Quiet. Necessary. Before he left, I stood at the doorway like a little kid again, holding back tears, not because he was leaving, but because of everything we never said before it was too late. You'll be okay, he said softly, finally meeting my eyes. We both will. It's going to take time and it's going to hurt. But sometimes, starting over is the only honest thing you can do. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without falling apart completely. As he walked down the steps, something unexpected happened. Not a dramatic hug or a movie-worthy final speech. Just a small smile. The first real smile I'd seen on his face in months. And I realized that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the first honest beginning either of us had seen in a long time. It wasn't a happy ending. But it was a real one. And in a life full of pretending, sometimes real is the best you can ask for. That was the moment I knew, everything had changed. Not just for him. For me too. And now, it was up to both of us to decide who we were going to become after the pieces stopped falling.